Hey guys, for those who don't know me, this is Joanne Smythe, and I'm talking with my celiac journey. Today I want to talk a little bit about my actual story. I'm going to kind of give you the cliff notes because, we're like 8 years into it, so I don't want to keep you guys forever. So, a little bit about the beginning. I actually had what triggered mine because it takes a trigger to actually make the disease happen or show its colors, and you actually can show symptoms and stuff. You can be a carrier of it. It is hereditary, but it does take a trigger for it to roar its ugly head, let's say. So roughly 2010, I think it was. My stepfather, my mom and stepfather had moved in with me back in 2008 to save some money and stuff so that they can retire and start traveling and stuff. And then 2009, he was diagnosed with cancer, very late stage cancer, and so he knew he was dying. He only had a few months, and so that was probably towards the end of 2009. 2010, early 2010, he was progressively really bad, and we were taking care of him at home, here at my house, and watching him pass is it was very difficult. The stress of it. He actually, the day he died, he had it was when someone is dying, it's very weird because they're not themselves and stuff. But anyways, he ended up on the floor, and he was kind of like crawling around the floor and stuff. So my husband and I were trying to lift him up, and he's at the time was like 180 pounds. And so my husband and I were trying to pick him up. As we picked him up, he passed away. And so he got extremely heavy. And, for me, it actually caused an injury to my left shoulder. I ended up tearing, my rotator cuff in several spots. And, I damaged some tendons and nerves and stuff in my left shoulder. So at the time when I lifted him up, and I kind of heaved because I was struggling, and when that's when my injury happened. But with all that going on and stuff, I didn't really realize. I was trying to absorb that someone had just passed away in my arms, and so the day was really tough. And keep in mind, I hadn't slept at all the night before because I had been taking care of him and stuff. And that brought on my actual first panic attack, was because later in the day I was exhausted, had no sleep, and all of a sudden my shoulders started hurting me really, really bad, and that caused some anxiety, and then that just festered, and it caused me to get really hot, and I had like a numbing feeling, and so I totally freaked out. So I was like, I got to go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room. They checked me out. They said, "You're just having a panic attack. You just went through a great ordeal. Go home, take this one Valium, and then if it persists, then, go see a doctor." Well, between him dying was a bigger stressor, but then, to add to it all the pain from my shoulder, I struggled with that for like over a year. I kept going to doctor. They said it's just got to heal. They just wanted to keep giving me pain pills, and I wouldn't take them because they bothered my stomach, so I never took the pain pills. So I basically lived on ice, and I just struggled for a good year with pain over my shoulder and stuff. So probably, I did, let's see, I want to say the end of 2011. Actually, 2011, I went to doctor after doctor. I raked up a ton of debt with all these tests trying to figure out what was wrong with my shoulder, but I was still in pain. With that stress, along with, I had some problems with one of my children. They were a young adult at the time, but my daughter actually had gotten involved with someone, and it was a really bad relationship. And, that really is what I think helped, made the trigger just magnify. So not only the stress from my shoulder pain, but then the stress of my daughter and not being able to help her really just pushed me over the edge. It just I got so sick. I got so sick with stomach problems and not being able to leave my house because I couldn't leave my bathroom. I did go to my doctor. She just said, here, take all these medications for, you know, antacid kind of like medications and stuff. And so they kept giving me this and that, and nothing was working. By the end of 2011, I was basically bedridden. I was just in pain from my shoulder and pain from my stomach. I couldn't hardly leave the bathroom. I was The anxiety was out of control. I couldn't figure anything out. And I had it. It was like December 31st. I won't forget it because it was New Year's. December 31st, 2011, I ended up going to the emergency room. I said, I've got to find out what's wrong with me. So, anyway, so they ran a ton of tests, CT scans, EKG, all that kind of stuff. And they came back and they said, you have GERD, you have acid reflux, you have anxiety, you have gallstones, you have kidney cyst, you have, just all this stuff, and they said, don't really worry about it. Just, you'll probably need to go see a GI, and something about your pain in your shoulder. You may want to see a neurologist because of the nerve pain and stuff. So, I was like, I've already done all that, with my shoulder. But anyway, so they did say, about a GI. So, I went home that next day, and I started kind of researching doctors. I had such a bad time with doctors because none of them would really listen. They were just too eager to hand a pill, and nothing was working, and I was really frustrated. So I started researching the doctor that they wanted me to go to, and I didn't really think I would like him. So I started researching GIs, and probably a few months in, I guess, I finally found one that I thought maybe would, have the same kind of mindset, that would want to talk with me and try to figure out what the heck was going on. So anyways, I made an appointment. I went and saw her, and I was telling her all this stuff and told her I had, went to the emergency room, and that, they said I had gallstones, and she said, she goes, we have to do a lot of testing and stuff, but I think it's celiac disease. And I was like, what the hell is celiac disease? And she says, well, you can't eat gluten. It triggers your body, and it's an autoimmune disease. And I'm like, what is gluten? I didn't even know, which I really didn't eat a whole lot that I knew of at the time. I didn't eat a lot of carbs, a lot of breads and stuff like that. But what I didn't know is that gluten's in pretty much everything. So, the salad dressings or whatever, that I did eat did have gluten. So even though I had a little bit of gluten, I was still really sick from it. So anyway, so yeah, so what this kind of frustrates me because she was thinking it was celiac, but she said we would have to do testing. But she said, you have gallstones, so let's rule out the gallbladder. So she sent me to another doctor, and then they scheduled me to have my gallbladder removed. And then, a few months went by with follow-ups with him, and recovering from all that. And then I was finally back at her office. Nothing had changed. I had my gallbladder out for nothing. So it frustrates me, but anyways, it is what it is. But I had no relief. Still same stuff, still same symptoms, same problems. And I was back in her office saying it wasn't the gallbladder. I'm still having the same exact problems. They were giving me pill after pill after pill for like acid problems or indigestion and all that kind of stuff. Nothing was helping. And she said, okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll do some blood work. Let's get you in for an endoscopy, which is where they put the camera down the throat. And she believed it was celiac disease. And I ended up having the test. It took like a month to go have the scope done and stuff. And, I had some blood work done, which ended up getting lost. So I had to wait and go back and do it again. And then they ended up finally, I had a meeting with her and a follow-up. And she did tell me, she confirmed celiac disease and ulcerative colitis. And she basically said, you have to go on a gluten-free diet. And still with me, even hearing that before my surgery for the gallbladder, I was still like, what the heck is celiac? I didn't believe it. I was in disbelief. I had never heard of it before. and I just was still in disbelief. So she basically told me just to see if you can find any books, see what you can find online about eating gluten free. So from there, I just really started doing a lot of as much research as I could. I bought every book I could. At the time, there wasn't a whole lot online. Um, there I wasn't on Facebook that much at the time. I didn't wasn't aware there was any groups or anything. I found that out a few years later. But I had really nowhere to turn. I didn't know. I read as much as I could from like celiac.org and stuff like that. And I read all the books, and I just, started doing my best about figuring out where gluten was. And the more and more I read and researched, I realized gluten's in everything, including, shampoos. And even though you don't eat that sort of stuff, right? You still, some people are very sensitive to the skin when they're a celiac. And so even using makeups or shampoos and stuff could be important to watch and stuff. And so I just really just started doing a lot of research, and I went to the basics because, I went in, I remember going into the grocery store for the first time and trying to figure out where gluten was, and everything I touched, it was so confusing. Now it's a little easier, the labeling has gotten a little bit better, but or there's more options, should I say. But at the time, I was so overwhelmed and stressed. My anxiety was through the roof. I couldn't take it. There was times I would have a mental breakdown in the store and leave because I just couldn't deal with it. So really what I did is, for all the newbies out there, I mean, this is my whole reason for doing everything I'm doing, is because there was no one at the time I was diagnosed that would you couldn't really listen to a real person. You could read what the celiac.org said, but you couldn't really converse back and forth with people that actually knew what you were going through. So that's what's made a real passion for me, is by helping others, especially newer people that are overwhelmed just like I was, and just knowing that they can relate to me, or I can relate to them, even because it's always this disease is so crazy, and it's not everybody suffers the same symptoms. Some might have symptoms, some may have a ton of symptoms. There's over 300 symptoms, so and others don't. So I mean, it's such a crazy disease. I mean, it affects everybody, some differently than others and stuff, but it still can affect our mindsets, and especially with family support and stuff. And so that was a big thing for me, is I wanted to start doing these videos and stuff and sharing my story, so that maybe I can comfort someone else and make them realize that it's going to be okay. It is a life-changing event. We do have to eat gluten-free for the rest of your life. You will never be able to go back to eating gluten. So please don't listen to all those people that are in the family and friends that say, oh, you haven't had gluten, and you can eat it now, you're healed or you're in remission. That's not true. You cannot have gluten. You just can't. So learn to make substitutes if you can handle the gluten-free flours and stuff. And my for my own self, I struggle with even gluten-free products. So if it's not certified gluten-free, then that still means that the FDA allows us, or says it's up to 20 parts per million can be ingested by a celiac. And that's, for some it may not bother them, but for me it still makes me sick. So I have to stay away from most gluten-free processed stuff. So for me, at the beginning, I had, it was just way too much trying to read labels and stuff like that. And even though my husband, who has been a godsend, I mean, he reads those labels for me. He would be on the phone. Something for you guys to know: on each package that's in the grocery store, it should have a 1-800 number on it. So if it's not clear, if you're not clear on it, then you can call them and they'll tell you, if it has gluten in it or anything. So that's something good. But I didn't have the patience to deal with that. It was so overwhelming and stressful. I think the first time I went to the grocery store, I was there for a couple hours and I just had a meltdown. And even though my husband was trying to help me, which he's been absolutely wonderful, he's been a huge support system for me. But it was just too much. So what I did was I ended up leaving that day. I didn't buy it because I just couldn't deal with it. But, I finally wrote down a list, and I went back to the basics. So for the newbies out there, until you can start realizing where gluten is located and what processed things or what seasonings or dressings or any of that, before you find out which products are safe for you, I highly recommend going to the basics. You guys, eat the meats. You can try dairy, as long as you're not showing any symptoms or anything. I find that a lot of celiacs tend to have some sort of issues with dairy or other foods in the future or whatever. But for me, I started simple. I just did with the meats, the eggs. I did some dairy, and I went with vegetables and fruits. And I started with that. I started healing with that. And once I got that, then I kept doing more research, and I started taking a little time, and I would look at a salad dressing and figure out if it was safe or not, and I didn't allow myself to get overwhelmed. I didn't go in there, you know, the first time I went in there to the grocery store, I had a list to prepare big meals like I was used to doing. And, whether it was enchiladas or whatever, I was having to read the enchilada sauce and the tortillas and, everything. And it was just too much. So keep it simple, meats, vegetables, fruits, dairy products, you can start there and at least get started with that, and so my whole point of all of this is to share my story, things that I struggled with, just in to help you guys, if you can relate to, if I can make you feel like you're not alone, then I feel like I've done something good. So that's what's really important to me. But I am going to this one's starting to get a little long, and so I don't want to hold you guys over. I will do a lot of other ones, other videos and stuff relating over the past years, things that I've struggled with and stuff, and things that have gone well, and how things are going. And I also will be sharing like product information and stuff with you guys. I've tried so many different things, and a lot of them didn't work. And so to me, I have found a few things that's worked really well for me, and I want to share them with you guys. So I'll be doing that on some other videos and stuff. But anyway, so I just wanted to, share a little bit with you guys so you have a little bit of background, and I look forward to more videos to come in the future. And you guys, you can always follow me on Facebook. I want to mention this real quick. There are some really great groups on Facebook about celiac disease and stuff. There's a lot of great people on there that are very resourceful and will share information with you and what's worked for them or what's not. You may find a little bit of negativity in there sometimes. Sometimes people tend to bark a little bit. They don't really mean to, but sometimes it happens. But we just have to deal with it. But anyways, but yes, you can follow me on Facebook. I will be posting more videos to come. So either friend me or just follow me, and you can get information. Also, I have a YouTube channel, and so you can like and subscribe there. And I will be back on with a few other different types of topics. And my whole goal here is to really be able to let you know that you're not alone, especially the ones that people are new. It's so overwhelming, and it's really draining, and it's very frustrating. I mean, there's so many different emotions going on there. Just know that you'll get through it. It takes